Today we're talking about the Hoka Mach 4 and whether or not you should jump on the hype train.
I wanna drive away. I wanna take you to tomorrow. You must go away. You don't really know me.
All right, hi everyone, and welcome back. I am Ben with One Slow to Run Fast. Today we are talking about the highly anticipated brand new Hoka Mach 4. So the Mach 4 was released about 3 weeks ago on March 1st. So one of the things that made this shoe so hyped and so anticipated is it's a complete redesign from the Mach 3. Additionally, this shoe actually got into the hands of a lot of reviewers back in like November, December, and the release date on it wasn't until just a couple of weeks ago on March 1st. So I've put this shoe through its paces and had it for a little over a week now. I've done everything from a long run to speed workouts to my regular weekly base mileage in the shoe. So I think I'm ready to give you my full review of the shoe. We'll start with the bottom of the shoe and we'll kind of work our way up. So one of the first things that you'll notice about the shoe is that it has 2 layers of foam on it. So on the midsole, you've got the rubberized EVA midsole. You can kind of see what that looks like. You do have some perforations through it so that the secondary foam does show through, particularly here in the heel. And then you've got some perforations towards the front of the shoe as well, which allows it to kind of move and spring a little bit better with your foot stride. One of the great things about the rubberized EVA is that it is fairly stiff, so that gives you a really good springy toe off. So when your foot lands and you move through your stride, you're gonna hit and then it's gonna be able to respond really well and propel you forward. So definitely a good thing there with the rubberized EVA midsole. On top of the rubberized EVA, you've got Hoka's standard ProFly midsole there. So that's the softer stuff. So you've got a little bit of that there as well, which will give you a little bit of a softer landing. And you certainly feel that in this shoe. It is a little bit softer, especially once you plant your foot. It's really a unique sensation when you're running in this shoe. You plant your foot and it feels somewhat soft, but then as your foot starts to move through your stride, you get that stiffer responsiveness from that midsole. So it is kind of a neat feeling when you're running and when you're moving through your paces in this shoe to be able to feel both of those just at the right moment in this shoe. The shoe also does have the early stage meta rocker in it, which Hoka, many of their shoes have, and that actually gives you kind of that propulsion forward. So when you land, it's going to feel like you're automatically or naturally kind of leaning forward, which helps move you through your stride. So that's another benefit of the shoe. If you like that in other Hoka shoes, if you've had a chance to try those out, you'll certainly love this shoe for that also. All right, moving on to the upper. So you do have an engineered mesh upper. It's very breathable. It is fairly durable as well. It's not as thin as you might experience in some shoes, but I still find it to be very breathable and very comfortable. One of the things that I've had issues with in Hoka shoes before, for instance, the most recent Hoka shoe that I tried out, really, at least the road shoe, is the Clifton 6. So I didn't try the Clifton 7, but the Clifton 6 for me was too narrow in the forefoot. So I ran a couple of days and then had to return the shoe. This one does give you a little bit more room. You still are pretty snug through the midfoot, and then you have a little bit more space as you get towards the toes. And so overall, I think it's a very comfortable upper on this shoe and really like that mesh. And again, it is very breathable and very comfortable. I've seen some people talk about the laces being too long. For me personally, I think they're actually just the right length. I don't see any issues with the laces. They are a little bit thinner than most laces, and they are just slightly stretchy. So overall, I think it's a good lacing system that they've put in this shoe. Personally, I haven't had any issues with it. One of the things that I do love about the shoe is the tongue on the shoe. I've noticed that a lot of shoe companies have started to move towards very thin tongues on the shoes, and personally I don't like that. I like to have at least a little bit of cushioning so that when I do try to cinch down the laces a little bit tighter or get some better lockdown in the midfoot, that the tongue helps cushion that a little bit so that the laces aren't just kind of pressing down on the top of my foot and making it uncomfortable. So what it has in this particular shoe is it's got kind of just a mesh tongue. I'll give you an up close here, but it's a mesh tongue, and it is very comfortable. However, it is still lightweight, so I think it's kind of the best of both worlds there. It's not so thin that it's uncomfortable, but it's not so thick that it adds additional weight. So I think it's kind of the perfect balance there with the tongue of the shoe. One thing that I was somewhat surprised by in this shoe is this is the first time that I've ever really run in one of these shoes that has the anatomical heel, or the elf heel as a lot of people like to call it. I was expecting this to have a little bit more give in it, but it is a very firm heel counter. You can see there's almost no give in it whatsoever. That doesn't make it uncomfortable at all on the run, and so I don't really see any issues with it, but I've ran in Ultras before and some other shoes, and so I am used to a shoe that has a little bit more give in that heel counter. This shoe, again, is very rigid in that heel counter, but again, it's not uncomfortable in any way, and I haven't had any issues with it personally. And then finally, one thing that I failed to mention with the shoe is you have the extended heel that Hoka has started to introduce. I almost feel like they introduced it on the 10.9 just to get people used to that idea, even though that was kind of a crazy shoe. And now they've kind of dialed it back a little bit in the heel of some of their shoes. But this has kind of that goat hoof. I'm not sure what the exact name of this is, but you've got that here in this shoe, and it is a little bit extended there. But again, a very comfortable ride overall. Talking about the stats of the shoe, you have 29 millimeters of stack height in the heel and 24 millimeters in the forefoot, giving you a 5 millimeter drop. And then as far as the weight of the shoe, in a men's size 9, it's 8.6 ounces, and then in the women's standard size, it is 7.1 ounces. All right, now that we've got some of the what's about this shoe out of the way, let's talk about some of the whys and the hows. So for me, I've used it for a variety of different runs, all of my weekly mileage, anything from speed work to long runs, etc. And really, I think this shoe is best. It's a really good daily trainer if you want something that's a little bit more responsive but still cushioned. You've got enough stack height in there that, even though it is a little bit more responsive and not as soft or as cushioned as many shoes on the market, I still think you have enough protection there that you don't really, your foot doesn't get fatigued like it would in a shoe with less stack height. So I think that's one of the neat things about the shoe is it is still pretty lightweight, still pretty responsive, but you have enough cushioning there to be able to provide you that protection that your foot would need to be able to log long mileage and do a variety of different things in the shoe. So a couple of days ago, I put it through some threshold paces on my run, and I found that it actually performed really well there. That meta rocker that is included in the shoe really helps to propel you forward and make the stride rather comfortable. And then it is, again, very responsive. It is fairly rigid, so when you do want to go faster, that toe off is really springy. It's a very interesting shoe in that I don't feel like it's as responsive in propelling you forward as some shoes that I found, but you almost get a kind of a bouncy sensation, like an up and down bouncy type sensation. I found myself kind of popping along on my toes more than anything. But again, still a very good shoe that you can do some speed work in. I personally wouldn't utilize this primarily as a speed shoe, but I think you can do that in some of your weekly mileage if you wanted to do that in this shoe. In terms of long runs, and if this shoe is really designed for that, I don't know that it's designed for really long mileage. You certainly could, especially if you're a faster runner. I could see you running a marathon in this shoe. I think for most people, it's a really good shoe for like that half marathon distance. I ran 12 miles in it and found towards that, the latter miles, 10, 11, 12, that my feet were getting a little bit achy, a little bit sore. That certainly could be just part of the fact that it's a newer shoe and I haven't fully broken it in yet. But again, I think it's really good around that half marathon distance. But as you start to get beyond that, it may be a little bit uncomfortable, and you may want something with more cushion, something like a Clifton or a Bondi, those type of things. But if you're doing a race and you've got some faster paces, if you're a little bit quicker runner, I think this certainly could get you up to that marathon distance in that case. So finally, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the shoe and whether or not not it actually lives up to the hype that you've seen on a lot of reviews and things like that over the last couple of months. Personally for me, I think it does live up to the hype. I think it's a really great shoe. A couple of the cons just to be mindful of with this shoe, as far as durability, again, I've only had this shoe for just a little over a week now. I've put about, I think probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 miles on it, but we're already starting to get some wear and tear on the forefoot and then in the heel of this shoe. So I do question the durability because of that. You're already starting to wear off the texture on the bottom of the shoe. So that is obviously an issue, is just looking at the durability. I would expect this shoe to be a good shoe in the 300 to 400 mile range. For really good, durable, like max cushion shoes, a lot of times for me, I can get close to that 500 mile mark in them. But again, I think this shoe, just based off of what I've seen thus far in terms of durability, you're probably going to get somewhere in the 300 to 400 mile range out of this shoe. One of the other cons that I see of this shoe is just the way that the outsole is designed. You do have some of the holes or the perforation in the forefoot there, and that is, to help, give you a little bit more movement in the shoe, a little bit more response. However, you'll see here, if you look really closely, you've actually got some glue that is, kind of still hanging out there. You've got some leftover glue and adhesive that they're using to meld or to mold the two foams together. So that's showing through. And additionally, one of the things that I found, if you run into I mostly run on sidewalks and roads, but even in those instances, I pick up a lot of thorns, I pick up a lot of rocks, and those end up getting lodged in here. So that is a little bit uncomfortable when you're running and then all of a sudden, you hear your foot clacking or scratching on the ground because you've got, a handful of things that have become stuck in your shoe. So not really great to be able to stop and do that. But I think, what the trade-off in that situation would be to put some, at least a thin layer of some denser rubber on the bottom, and that would prevent that. However, that would add weight to the shoe. So I think there's a trade-off there of what you want to do. You can see here, I've actually got some rocks still stuck in my shoe from earlier today. And then finally, I think one of the big pros of this shoe is that it's only $130. So a lot of shoes on the market right now are really pushing that $150 price point. So I think at $130, this is a very good value, especially if you can find it for even 10% off or something along those lines. That would be a really good value for this shoe. Because the shoe just came out, it's really hard to find discounts on it right now. But again, I think it's even a good value at that $130. All right, everyone, that's my review of the Hoka Mach 4. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you appreciated this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.